Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you joined us for the Chitty Chat Chat, you can tell that the three of us are fast friends, and today is going to be a really good conversation. We are just going to go and flow, and super excited for that. Really honored to have our guest with us today, Derek Young Jr., co-founder and executive producer of Leadership Brainery, which I gotta tell you, Derek, as a nonprofit nerd or the nonprofit nerd, anything with Brainery is like
Oh
endorsed
yeah.
nerd. So I'm excited to have you on to talk to us about this topic. Everyone can see here it's mergers and acquisitions. So before we do go into this conversation with our new best friend, Derek, Julia Patrick joins us today. She's the CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. There's my nerd glasses that will hopefully complement the brainery. I'm Jarrett Ransom, your nonprofit nerd, CEO of the Raven Group. And again, Julie and I are both so extremely honored to have the continued investment and support from all of these sponsors that you see before you. These companies literally exist to help you do more good. Yes, your mission, all 9 main sectors within the nonprofit community. These companies exist to help you drive your mission goals forward. So please check them out, although not now, but as soon as we wrap up today's show, which will go by very quickly, because again, our guest today, Derek Young Jr., co-founder and executive director with Leadership Brainery. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
You know, I don't know if it's like the planets have aligned or something, but within the last 36 hours, I've had a very venerable organization that actually my grandfather was involved in call me up and say, we think it's time for us to get involved in an M&A and we need some help. And we had this really interesting chat. And I was like, I swear, tune in because we got it. Yes. And it's just crazy so that we would have this, fortuitous opportunity. But before we get into all that, I would love for you to talk to us about your journey and how you came up with Leadership Brainery and what it is that you do.
Yes, most definitely. I always get excited to share this story because Leadership Brainery came out of my lived experience, both my lived experience and my co-founder's lived experience. And so we were college students at Grambling State University in Louisiana. And Jonathan Allen, who serves as our director of development here at Leadership Brainery, was the student body president, and I was on its executive board. And so my responsibility was student relations and how do we really listen to our students' concerns, build relationships with the administration, and really get things done on campus to add more progress to all the issues that many institutions face, especially historically Black colleges and universities in the South. And so we started doing a lot of great things, not only at Grambling, but across the country. And so many of our peers started reaching out saying, how are you getting so much done? And can you all help us do that? And so while we were in college and throughout graduate school, we would travel around the country to different universities and train student leaders on how to get things done, how to build those relationships with their administrations. And then once we got to graduate school, we experienced being one of the only few Black men in our master's and doctoral programs. And so I went to Tufts School of Medicine for my master's in public health, and I was the only Black man to enter my cohort there. And then I went to BU Law Boston University School of Law before I ended up self-eliminating myself. And I was the one out of 2 Black men to come into my class out of 250 students in 2017. Same for Jonathan when he went to get his master's at SMU and his JD at BU. Very similar makeup. And so as we, as leaders, we started asking the universities, not only the ones we were attending, but across Boston and across the country, what is the issue? And if we really want to close opportunity and wealth gaps for marginalized populations, we need to ensure that all levels of education are accessible, especially the highest levels of education like master's and doctoral degrees. And so like many of them typically say, we have a hard time finding and tapping into diverse communities. And so we said, well, we train young leaders all the time who have aspirations to be in these occupations that either preference or require postgraduate degrees. And so that's when Leadership Brainery evolved into a nonprofit in 2018. And we took our current community and created a pool and pipeline for diverse talent into master's and doctoral degrees. And so now we are an organization with a team of 5. We've been operating for 3 years. We have 14 postgraduate member schools who recruit our talent. We have corporate partners and almost 500 individual donors that support our work. And so it's just a really great mission that we're really excited about and excited to build a movement around, because for so long, we've had many movements around access to college, which is extremely important, but not much conversation around access to master's and doctoral degrees. And we understand that it's expensive. It's a lot of barriers to get there, but there's so many communities who have had access to this level of education for so long. And if we don't, certain communities don't catch up, we'll continue to see these opportunity and wealth gaps.
Wow.
Wow.
Great.
Okay.
I know. I'm just like, when I was in undergrad, I was looking forward to spring break and holiday breaks. I was not nearly as, forward thinking and as civically engaged as it sounds, you and your team really dedicated to. So first of all, thank you. Truly, thank you. For me, genuinely, all of this is so inspiring. Love hearing the story. And really, Julia, I watched you too, and we were just, both of us were just like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the thing about privilege, is that you only know what you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's really a fascinating thing for you to identify this push to get people of color into the university system, but then it kind of stops. How do you get them out of the system to graduate and then to advanced degrees? And that is fascinating. I love this story, and I love the trajectory that you've been on. So you have this amazing concept. You have a first person experience and mission. You're moving through a lot of success. People are looking around and saying, yeah, these are 2 guys that I want to get involved with because I see what's going on. I would imagine that is what took you into this explosive growth, because people are looking around and saying, wow, yeah, this is an issue. And how did you manage such explosive growth or interest when you're trying to work within your sector or your little community, and then all of a sudden it's like exploding?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say, of course, it just wasn't the 2 of us. We have a very supportive community. And so we couldn't do the work that we are doing without our supporters, without our donors, without our talent who even pour into the operations of our work. And so it's been a team effort over the years. And honestly, I think it really just requires the structure, the dedication, the affinity to the mission, and you'll get it done. And so we've had some great growth over the last 3 years. And I think, it's also contributed to the other opportunities we've had in life. We've just been very involved in a lot of different organizations, very multicultural networks. And so being able to bring everyone around and mobilize everyone around this mission, and they're finally saying, oh, wow, that is important. And we've had so many conversations just as a nation, as a world over the last few years around diversity in leadership roles. And when we do look around at a lot of the leadership roles and we look at their academic credentials, many times, rather, those postgraduate degrees give them the ability for more career mobility, or you have those occupations that absolutely require, like a lawyer, a doctor, a professor, and so forth. You can't have those occupations without the degrees. And so, just folks having more awareness has really helped with our growth, and let's just continue to get support around it.
Okay, so now you've got a great mission, you've got passion, you've got some support, financial, social, emotional, intellectual. But this is the reality. What do you know about managing the nonprofit sector, and how did you take all this energy and interest and frame it in getting business done under the nonprofit, lens?
Exactly. No, that's a great question. Yes, we had no experience in nonprofit, and it's still a learning experience every single day. Growing a greater love for nonprofit every single second. I would say again, it's really my community, and this is why Leadership Brainery exists, to open up these opportunities for others. When I was in graduate school, I was able to meet a lot of different folks who had experiences in all fields. And, I really understand how nonprofit, is, you just don't need nonprofit professionals to make, this thing work. You need lawyers, you need educators, you need business folks to really put their minds together to make sure that you have a sustainable organization. And so we were able to mobilize the right people, and that's what's really helped us even just open ourselves up and say, hey, we're open to learning. You've had this experience. How can we bring you in, learn from you, and really build that support around our movement? And so it's, our board of directors, our advisors have been all really supportive in pouring their experience that they've had over their lifetime in the nonprofit space into us as well.
Well, one of the things I know we've heard of more and more over the last 2 years is truly this conversation of mergers and acquisitions. In fact, I want to say about a year and a half ago now, Julia, we had someone on from Utah, and she shared with us a statistic over the entire state of Utah in the nonprofit sector. It was looking at about 30%, I believe, on average, 30% of all of the nonprofits registered in Utah were saying that they may not make it through the pandemic, right? Clearly, we're still in this pandemic, right? This global pandemic. And merger and acquisition conversation has come up more than ever. So I'm curious if you can give us, really this whole, what is a merger and acquisition? What is the difference? And is it different in a nonprofit sector?
Yeah, no, for sure. So of course you do have the for-profit M&A, and then you have the nonprofit M&A. I think it's a very thin line between what's the difference from the merger and the acquisition. But from our experience, we did do an acquisition. And so I'll start there. And so the acquisition is really when two organizations come together and you have a surviving organization. And so you take all of the merging organization's assets, and you decide what to do with their team, with their board. A merger is a bit different in terms of both organizations may still keep their foundation, but they just come together to support each other around resources and mission to really grow their impact. And so, from my experience, it's been more so, do you want to have a surviving organization or bring two organizations together?
Okay, you choked me up there, Derek. Sorry. Okay, so I love the way you defined that and described it. So now move us into the conversation about Dear Future Colleague, because this is an organization that is in the same community where you are working, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Dear Future Colleague, amazing organization. I'm so excited that it's now a program of Leadership Brainery. And so this comes back to the conversation we were sharing earlier around our support system. And so actually one of our board members, Gavin Alexander, came to us about Dear Future Colleague. And so, of course, always keeping your board up to date of everything so they can, be out in the community advocating and talking about you is always critical. But Gavin is a graduate of Harvard Law School, and Leadership Brainery has worked with HLS over the past years. We had our first Impact Summit in 2019 at Harvard Law School. And so he was talking to the Dean of Admissions there, and they had a student, Nancy Fairbank, who had started an organization that had really took off during the pandemic. And so what Nancy and her team started to do was to mobilize law students from around the country that go to mostly tier 1 law schools to mentor prospective law students. And so in their first 10 months, they had mobilized over 500 mentors around the country and did manual pairing to over 400 mentees. And it was very specific pairing. So they paired based on need, on identity characteristics, on what schools you may want to go to and what mentors do we have. And so when Gavin had brought that to us, we were like, that's incredible. Leadership Brainery, of course, we have the same mission of increasing diversity within these postgraduate degrees. However, we did not have a core mentoring component yet within our programs. DFC had this great mentoring program that they had built out. Leadership Brainery had just got some technology for us to be able to mobilize our community on an online platform. And so when they brought that to us, Nancy, the founder of Dear Future Colleagues, shared, she's going off to work for, some large law firms in New York. And of course, the mission is going so well and the impact is happening that they really need an organization that is sustainable to be able to take it on. And so that's when we started in that process. We had the technology so that they no longer had to do matching manually, but now we can do it automatically, which helps with a lot of time and for us to keep up with evaluation and so forth. So it was just a perfect fit. We really aligned with our missions, but then our needs for both organizations.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, you are a directed, charismatic man who's very good at communicating your vision and your passion. And this is one of the hallmarks that we see with people that start nonprofits, because it's hard. It's really, really hard. And you have to have that, that passion. And that ego gets in the way. And I'm wondering, for good and for bad, how could you marry these strong personalities that you were probably working with?
Yeah, I think at the core, we all really care about the impact in our missions. And so, ego aside, we went in from that vantage point. And so the first time that we met, we really just bonded over our values of wanting to see more equity in our society. And we did come from completely different backgrounds, racially, socioeconomic status. And so we were able to put our both lived experiences on the table and just bond over that. And so I think, initially the vision is first. And so, as you go through the process, of course, you then have some different things that you may butt heads, against. And, that has been a learning experience around what is best for Leadership Brainery, but then also what has been working with Dear Future Colleague that we want to continue as they are now under our organization. But we've had to make some sacrifices on both ends and just really come together and say, beyond our egos and what we want to see happen, what is best for the community that we serve. And I think once we ask that question, we always get to the best solution.
I wish and I hope that we can take the snippet of what you just said and blast it and it goes viral. If more people had that thought and the ability to think, let's connect, first of all, with our core value, let's focus on the impact, let's let ego, and I love that you called it out, Julia. You're like, well, ego on the table, right?
But it's true. I mean, we call it founder syndrome.
Yes.
For a reason. I mean, it is a defined behavior. Yeah.
And it goes beyond founder syndrome, really to, I think, title and structure and pay and, really everything, because mergers and acquisitions happen even beyond that founder level. And I've seen it really here in my own community, and to see where, okay, our focus is to provide food to people in need. So there's multiple organizations doing this, but how might we come together in this collective space, focused on the impact, focused on those core values that you so eloquently described them, Derek. So thank you for that. And again, if we could just take that soundbite and just send it, like everywhere, is so impactful. I'm curious, as we wrap up today's episode, and we warned you, it goes by very quickly.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we're not going to have much time to talk about that great Cajun food that we talked about in the Kitty Chat. But yeah, what are some things you wish you had known, right? Hindsight. What are some of these things that, man, I wish I knew this, or I wish we had considered this? What are some of those elements that you would recommend to our viewers today?
Yeah, most definitely. I think, what we did to try to really ensure that the mission and heart of Dear Future Colleagues stayed around was the founder joined Leadership Brainery's board of directors. And so we still have her really engaged with the organization as a whole. One thing that, as we look back and we're still in this transition period of what I wish we would have done earlier is have the critical conversations with more than just the leadership. And so, we were having the founders and like the management of both organizations were having the conversations, but we didn't engage our team members into after the acquisition was final. And so there was just some gaps in communication. Some of the team members and volunteers felt a bit that they weren't engaged in our decision making. And so that did, tarnish morale a bit and, open up some issues that we could have prevented. And so, that's one thing that I really encourage folks. I think from a management perspective, you often don't want to involve everyone in the process so early on because things change and so forth. But there has to be a point before everything is final that you engage your team and say, hey, this is where we are. Do you all have any feedback, any things that we should be considering? So we even make sure that now the transition of bringing these teams together and some team members may having to leave, depending on the structure and like now fundraising for staff members for DFC and so forth changes up. And so we just want to make sure everybody feels a part of that decision making. And so that's one thing. Let's see, I would say one thing that we did that I would encourage anyone thinking about it, M&A, to do is to get pro bono counsel. And so both, parties did get pro bono counsel. And many times when I read about mergers and acquisition, they do talk a lot about making sure that you have the legal fees and so forth. But a lot of that can be alleviated if you just ask some counsel for help too.
Mm-hmm. Did you find that you had fear within your teams about change is hard? I mean, we're going through these pandemics, dealing with all these problems. Did you have to alleviate some fear? That's question one. And then question two, how did the community look upon this? Did they say, oh, wow, somebody's in trouble? I guess another fear-based question, or yay team, this is great. I mean, how did that kind of play out?
Yeah, for sure. No, I think in terms of the fear of the team members, initially, more so on Dear Future Colleagues side of them saying, okay, well, we're being acquired. So what happens to us? And I think that's a common question. You should ask that question. And so, like I said earlier, being able to articulate that much early on is key. But the way that we have really gotten through that is still making time available for that DFC team to express their feelings, express their concerns, and not me just answering those and addressing those myself, but then going back to my team, going back to my board, making sure that I have multiple perspectives because, you don't want that ego to come up when you want to say, okay, well, I know what's best for Leadership Brainery because this is my organization. Making sure that I always have other perspectives is key too.
Amazing. Are you still co-branding, or are you using their name, or is that moving away? Or you use the word program. Mm-hmm. Is that how you've pulled that through?
Yeah, we pulled it through of making it one of Leadership Brainery's core programs. So now Dear Future Colleague is a program of Leadership Brainery. And we love the name. It's like Dear Future Colleague.
Yeah. It's a great name because you kind of get you kind of figure out, you intuit, I guess, what you're trying to do.
Exactly. And that's what mentorship is all about, right? You are mentoring folks to join your community. And so, Dear Future Colleague, this is who I'm engaging with. So we kept the name. We did do a little color brand changes to match Leadership Brainery a bit more. But for the most part, the name has changed. The online platform, of course, they didn't have that initially. So that has changed. We have hired a new full-time manager of Dear Future Colleague now. So that's changed and wasn't someone who was formerly on that team. And so we're still bridging those relationships, making sure that She is very familiar with the old structures and being able to work with their old team to onboard properly.
Wow. It is so fantastic. And, as we wrap up our short time together, what's in the future? What can we expect for you in the new year?
Oh goodness, we have something really exciting happening in the
Oh, Can you tell us-
year.
can you
Do tell.
Yes. So many times when, of course, when folks go to graduate school or college in general, they tend to stay on their campuses, especially graduate students too, because you're always in the library, you're always so busy. And so what Leadership Brainery has done, we are opening up our first physical, what we're calling Leadership Brainery Clubhouse. And so it is in this beautiful location in Boston. And as you may know, Boston is the academic hub, and we have so many universities here. And so now when graduate students do come who are part of our member schools, they have a place in the heart of downtown Boston to be able to come and network and access professional development. And so not only are we wanting to strengthen our relationship with our institutions by help they recruit talent for us, but then they have a hard time retaining their talent too. And so now there are students saying, hey, I found community in Boston. Even if I was one of the only few at my institution, I found some folks at another institution and we go out, we have a great time. But then Boston also has a big brain drain. And so many folks come here for school and then they leave. So we have very just horrible diversity issues here in the city and the workforce. And so our goal with our clubhouse is now all the talent that we do have, from our mentors to our mentees, then being able to build a relationship with each other in the local community in Boston. Hopefully some of them will decide to stay so we can continue to diversify the workforce here too.
Oh, that is juicy. I love it. And I'm thinking already, Julia, I'm curious if Derek would allow us. I think when we talk about going on the road, we need to broadcast from the yeah, to highlight that wonderful community asset. I just think as we think creatively outside the box and really better understand what is it that our clients, our constituents need, and how can we best support them. I just think that's fantastic. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you for this platform. It's been a great conversation, and I'm so grateful for the work that you all do to really heighten the voices of nonprofits.
Well, you can come back as long as you color match the deck.
Okay.
I want everyone to know that we did not plan this.
We did not.
That's how sharp you are. It's been really interesting, Derek, and I love that you, in the midst of a lot going on in your life, could figure out that something could be bigger than yourself and could take this on. It's really, as I say to Jarrett every once in a while, this gives me hope for the future. It's super cool to see this. And yes, I think we need to take the nonprofit show and broadcast from your new clubhouse, because that's
oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Our grand opening is February 4th. It is a beautiful place. So I have to send you all the promo video afterwards too.
Please.
I would love it.
Please.
Check out leadershipbrainery.org. Absolutely fascinating. I think that there's some wonderful things ahead of you, and we hope to keep track of you and see how you take this organization and really make inroads across our country. Absolutely fascinating, and best of luck to you. Hey, what a great conversation. And we have conversations like this every day. Jarrett and I are so fortunate to be a part of the nonprofit show. If you want to find more of our episodes, we're coming up on our 450th, 500th episode. We are on Roku, YouTube, Amazon Fire TV, Vimeo. Oh my gosh, some other ones as well. But check us out, because we've got a lot cooking. And again, thank you to all of our presenting sponsors. Without you, we would not be here having this conversation as we have with Derek Young Jr. Amazing insight into something that I think we're going to find more and more of a useful tool, the merger and acquisition aspect of our nonprofit sector. Okay, Jarrett, I'm totally excited by this conversation today.
Yes.
I am too. So grateful. I feel like the three of us have been connected well beyond today's episode. Thank you again for sharing your valuable time, your expertise. Wish you the best in this
Yes.
journey. And again, we'll look forward to that promo video to be sent to us for the February grand opening.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you all so much for this platform, and I look forward to returning.
Absolutely. Hey, as we end every episode, we want to remind all of our viewers and our community in the nonprofit sector to stay well so you can do well. We'll see you back here tomorrow, everyone. Thanks so much.